Robert Plank Show, episode 232, Mantra Leadership and Mantra Design. Innovate, Buy, or Die with Dana
Okay.
Oliver. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the program. Our guest today is Dana Oliver, and he is the recently retired Senior Director of Research and Development for Medtronic's Legacy Surgical Technologies, and he helped it grow it from $100 million to about $2 billion in annual revenues over 14 years. So Dana has approximately 30 years of experience in the fields of medical devices, and he's worked for Medtronic, Genzyme, Sims Level 1, a bunch of other places, and he's applied for over 30 patent applications and been granted 25 U.S. patents to date, and he's the author of 2 books. One is called Mantra Leadership, Don't Become the Emperor with No Clothes. Now that book focuses on emotionally intelligent leadership skills that can result in as much as 30% or more improvement in productivity, and Mantra Design, Innovate, Buy, or Die. And that book discloses how to unlock your customers' unmet needs and transform them into patent-protected, premium-priced, market share-leading technology. So we're going to unpack a bunch of cool stuff today. Mr. Dana, how are things?
Hey, Robert, thank you. I want to say it's an honor and a privilege to be part of the Robert Plank Show. So thanks for having me as a guest.
Awesome. Well, it's a privilege to have you on. And so can you kind of tell us about this book and about this whole mantra leadership and sort of what makes it new and different and special?
Sure. I mean, so I tried, I've been very successful working in business and in particular in innovation. And part of that, I wanted to begin writing about best practices, not only innovation best practices, but also business best practices. So, I wrote the first book, Mantra Leadership, all about to be an emotionally intelligent person and leader. It's because it's so important. I mean, I know a lot of your audience is small companies, and it's really simple. Who wants to work for a jerk? I mean, and if you want the best out of your employees want to come to work. They want to give their all. I mean, they'll move mountains for you if they like you, if you share a vision and you invest in them and incorporate them into your dream and part of your strategy. The second book, Mantra Design, it's all about identifying your customers' unmet needs and then transforming those unmet needs into premium priced products and patent protection. I've made a career of that, and it's been amazingly successful. And so that's what I wanted to write about. And each of the books, I love mantras. I use them every single day, and they're great because being part of leadership, you have to have consistent messaging with your people. So that's the essence of the books.
Cool. So if I'm understanding this right, so the mantra leadership book is about like managing your employees and things like that, and then the mantra design book, is that one more about like the marketing and dealing with the customers and all that?
I would say, yeah, you're absolutely right on the mantra leadership. It's all about how, everything from, how do you pay employees? How do you identify good ones? How do you treat them? How do you build a staff from 1 to 100? How do you manage those folks? How do you, everything from communicating them to involving them to disciplining them. The latter one is all about how do you identify your customers' unmet needs. And I think this certainly is going to resonate with your audience base, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to ultimately have a breakthrough product, it's about not only the product, but about the entire experience. But how do you identify that experience? Well, to me, it's about getting really close to your customers. In the book, is relevant. Even though I have 30 years in medical device, it's practical to any business, irrespective of what sector you're competing in. And so, example, one of the early chapters is learn your customer's world. So for me, what that meant was, I had over 100 scientists and engineers. I would take a subset of those and I'd educate them on our customer. Namely, I'd have formal anatomy classes. I'd have formal instructional cadaveric teachings with physicians. We'd have to learn the vernacular. We'd have to learn the procedure base, the therapies, and when you do that, then you can begin to talk to your customer at a peer level. And it's only then, until you can reach a peer level with your customer, you're never going to truly appreciate what's really difficult for them. And the difficulty is where you begin to identify unmet needs. What is painful? What takes a long time? What is inefficient? Well, your customers, they get used to these things, and so they naturally won't tell you. But the closer and closer you get, you can begin to identify these pinch points.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And this is sort of an area where I think that up until maybe the last year or two, I ignored this, and I thought that, oh, I'll just kind of assume I know what they know, and I'll assume that I'm kind of on the same wavelength as that customer. And it's been really eye opening, especially in like internet marketing, and I sell like WordPress plugins and things like that. And it's been very eye opening in figuring out like that customer, like the language and the words they use and the phrases they use and like the exact things that they mention if I talk about like a website or talk about like WordPress and stuff like that. And I've noted, and so I'm like, is that what this is all about? Just like that? I don't know. It's almost like if left unchecked, I'll gravitate more towards like sort of like the ivory tower and like out of touch like language and marketing. So is that sort of along the same lines as this sort of research?
Yeah, I think, and that's what I've made a career on, right, Robert, is that at the end of the day, it's so easy to not get deeply involved with your customer. But let's just take, for instance, let's just say if you wanted to develop the next generation cutting knife for a chef. I mean, certainly you can begin to explore all kind of metals, which makes sense, and what holds a cutting edge, and what's sharp and balanced. But the reality is, you can do all this research in your house or in your garage, in your shop. But if you don't put that knife in the hands of a chef, how do you know whether it's good or not good? It's all those little subtleties that's where you begin to find out when, part of one of the chapters is, after you learn your customer's world, one of my mantras is that innovation begins with an I, not the letter I, but the eyeball. And what that means is you immerse yourself in your customer's world, because when you begin to do that, when you're watching them quietly, when you observe them, you begin to see those pain points, those redundancies, those nuances that they no longer talk about. It's like anything, right? When you become really good at what you do, you take it for granted. I can tell you one of the procedures I would do regularly is that before, if I was developing a new technology, before we would bring it into a cadaveric setting, we'd have an entire working, all the instruments, all the OR set up, a cadaver, we'd have that human anatomy there and available to us. But before I'd go there, I would sit down with our physician customers, and my team would ask them, hey, this is this procedure, this is the new tool and device that we're talking about. And it would, to me, my astoundment, they would talk to us about, oh yeah, this is my approach, or this is how I use that. But then, you know what? We'd leave the area where we were chatting, the theater, and we'd go into the operating room. And lo and behold, they would do not what they just told me they would do. They would do something entirely different. And it wasn't that they were trying to lead me down a false path. What happens is, human nature is you forget. It's kind of like going to the dentist, right? If you have a painful experience, you forget that. But boy, the next time you have to have another root canal, boy, you remember, that experience. But it's just not so vivid.
That makes a lot of sense, and this is again like this is the kind of thing where I wish I noticed this sort of thing sooner, and I'm still trying to get a better handle on watching what those customers do, and as opposed to what it is that they say, right? Like they say they do something, and then I watch them,
Yes.
I'll like watch their computer screen, and I'll notice that maybe they don't know how to right click, or I'll notice that they have a problem saving files, and it's like as dumbed down and as simple as so many things I feel like I'm explaining, then I watch them do something, and I'm like, whoa, like I thought I was at the absolute like rock bottom of simplicity, but then I see them do it, I'm like, I need to somehow make it even simpler. And so when you're sort of watching people, you're watching them, or that they're telling you what they do, and you're watching them use it in reality. How do you avoid like being too careful? How do you avoid getting bogged down
Yeah.
with all this stuff and then not actually launching or not actually putting something out there?
Yeah, that's a great question, Robert. And going back to your point about watching people with the right click or other, um, I will tell you that one of my mantras is simple beats better every time. So even though there might be a better technology out there, if it's not simple to use, people will not and fully embrace it. There'll always be that small part of the community that it's like computers, right? I acknowledge and I prescribe to, identify the 20% of features that will delight 80% of your customers. There are many companies that are out there and they're exhaustively trying to develop every feature under the sun. But the reality is, how many of your customers are going to use every one of those features? Not your average customer. So part of being successful is you need to identify what your market is, who your customers are, and how you want to compete with those customers. As far as your question, and I didn't mean to get off topic, but I felt it was relevant, is that, how do you know when to launch? Well, for me, yeah, I like to say that if you talk to anywhere from 12 to 20 customers, you can tease out as much as anywhere from 75 to 90% of the unmet need if you're asking the right questions and you're observing them. So I've never entered a lab where I didn't learn something new. So the key to me was, after we evolved a device, when we began to put it back in the hands of our users, and I would get to a dozen or more physicians, and I started hearing things like, "Hey, Dana, this is great," or "You have something special," or "Hey, when is this going to be available for the marketplace?" When I began to hear that consistency of, "Hey, I want to use this," they weren't saying that, but they were, then boy, you're ready to rock and roll. But if every time you're putting it in front of a customer and your customers are stumbling around, you're not ready to go.
Interesting. So yeah, so when they get to the point where they're asking like, how can I buy this? Where can I get this? Then that's pretty cool that you know that you're on the right track. And then as far as the simple beats better idea that we keep kind of circling back to, I mean, when you were explaining that, I was thinking in terms of like smartphones. It used to be that every year there was some crazy new feature like Siri came out, and it seems like
Yeah,
sort of at a certain point, like once like the voice commands and stuff like that came out, it's like now when there's a new phone, no one's really excited about anything new. It's more just like, well, here's the new phone to replace the phone that I broke. Or I think about stuff like Chromebooks, right? Like these
right.
laptops, and all they can do literally just go on the internet, but there's a huge demand for them as opposed to, the latest Dell laptop. And it's like, well, great. This year it has an extra 1 gigabyte of RAM. Well, who cares? Because it's more about like how can I use it? And I really like how you mentioned there that you don't have to talk to necessarily like hundreds or thousands of people. Just those 12 to 20 customers kind of gives you
Yeah,
most of what you need. And it reminds me of the book Rework, where they're talking about like stripping down features and stuff like that. And what I really liked and was really encouraging about that advice and your advice is that I don't necessarily have to like keep a master list of every single feature everyone said. I can just kind of look at what's in front of me, and then if something sticks, if I just keep hearing the same sort of like question or difficulty, that I can sort of just keep that in mind. And so with all these different things that we should be doing, is there like sort of a step-by-step process in this whole this mantra design thing? Like is there like a way
yeah.
for someone to take inventory and walk them through? Okay, so what is that
Y-
process?
I mean, well, I I don't have all the mantras right in front of me, but I mean, the book has 14 different mantras. It starts with, innovate, buy or die, which is the essence of organic innovation is so much more important than trying to acquire technologies. It falls into learn your customer's world, which we briefly talked about, learning anatomy, learning physiology, because look, at the end of the day, if your customer speaks French and you don't understand it, well, your customer might be able to tell you the best and greatest next technology, but if you can't understand them, then what good is that? Innovation begins with the eye. All of these mantras, and there's 14 of them in the book, all takes you down that pathway that bring that unmet need to market. Everything from when is simple good enough to, when is the market ready, and then how do you run your business? What are the important things between revenue and EBIT and market share? And so, I mean, we could spend hours talking about this. But it's all to your point. It's all very methodical, and for your customers, it's great for these startup companies because I think it helps walk them to a very methodical pathway of how to look at customers, how to look at products, how to commercialize them, how to bring them to marketplace, and how to think a little differently based on a guy that's kind of been there, done that, and has a pretty successful track record behind him.
Awesome, and I've bought both books, I've only had a few minutes to sort of flip through them. What I appreciate about a lot of this is, sometimes I'll buy some of these business books that talk about, like having a good company culture or things like that, and
Yeah,
sometimes it'll be loaded up with too much like MBA speak, or it'll be kind
yeah,
of like have like a 50-step process, and I get overwhelmed before I even start. And what I like about just kind of flipping through here is that it seems like it's pretty common, like first of all, like pretty common
yeah.
sense stuff and pretty easy to understand language, so that even if we're not, business geeks, whatever sort of company we happen to have, like, you have all the medical stuff, and I have like some online stuff and some website stuff. It seems like we can all sort of understand these things that need to be done without having to have like all these years of this education and stuff like that.
I thank you for that, Robert. I appreciate that compliment. And that was my approach. I'm a very pragmatic guy. I believe in over communicating. I mean, I believe in simple. And, one of my gifts is, having the ability to see things that, not necessarily that ultimately doesn't exist, but how to put together things that are already out there that people haven't conjoined before. It's interesting to me that when you think about innovation, um, almost 75% of all innovation has been developed somewhere else in perhaps an adjacent technology. If you look at things like NASA, great innovation is happening through the space program and the trickle down effect. If you think about the boating industry or the biking industry, these are great technologies where there's fantastic innovation. And if if you have a problem, I challenge my people all the time to begin thinking about solving that problem. And it's amazing when they're, at the park with their child, or they're reading a book, or they're flipping through a periodical at the doctor's office. When you challenge people to think about a problem, your brain works 24 hours a day. It's processing in the background. You might not consciously be thinking about that issue, but when you're looking through technologies, lo and behold, it'll pop. That epiphany will happen, and you go, "Oh my God, I can use, I don't know, maybe that lightweight titanium frame structure for a more challenging problem that we were working at another application, or you saw a new metal, or who knows what it is? Maybe a new feature for a computer, or it could be anything."
And you know what? I can completely relate to that in a couple of ways. One, in the sort of running it in the background and having that question hanging in your mind of like, like what can I do to solve this little problem, or what can I do to make this sort of user experience easier? And what I really liked in what you said there also is that a lot of this innovation is just in combining two existing things. And I've had those
Yeah.
sort of epiphanies all the time where, where I would go and like walk along the river and stuff like that, and I would think, oh, well, like, years ago we made this software that clones a website, makes a copy of it, and then we have this other training course about, teaching people how to make a membership site, and I'm thinking, man, let's just sell the template on how to make a membership site. So I mean, I have those kinds of breakthroughs all the time as well. Just that, not worrying about the problem so much, and just kind of letting my subconscious work on it 24 hours a day, and then sort of combining things together. And so, with all of your experience and people you've worked with and these mantras and stuff like this, like, is there a low-hanging fruit, or is there something where like everyone needs to be focusing on this one thing?
Yeah, you know what? I would tell people that you can have the greatest idea in the world, and at the end of the day, you have to go out and pursue that. That's the one thing. And so, part of my advice to your startup communities and your entrepreneurs is, for me, one of the reasons I've been able to be successful is that every morning when I woke up, and every day before I went home from work, I would ask the question, what is the single most important thing that I need to accomplish either today or tomorrow? And then additionally, what is the longest lead item that I need to address? Because every day that goes by, that long lead item is an incompressible moment if you don't action that thing. So I think that's good advice for your entrepreneur communities. I think the other thing is, when you talk about a lot of the technology, I think the world is moving, and this is great, is that it's about people's ecosystem. And what I mean by that is that, your ecosystem is, Let's take your phone, for instance. Your phone has moved to the ability to begin processing faster and faster processing speeds. Well, what's interesting over time, we're not seeing that dilemma so much anymore, right? Your ability to load multiple applications and to do lots of processing on your phone has that power and that computing ability now. So now it's beginning to breach into how simple is it to use. And Apple was great about that, right? There's not a lot of buttons, not a lot of knobs. You have effectively have an on and off button, and the rest is you can use with finger swipes or a little greater depression of your finger. Beyond that is if you look at Echo, it's about now how do you talk to your phone? So, or talk to your living environments to make it simple. You can talk to Echo, you can adjust the temperature in your house, or, you can order your wife flowers, or you can save an appointment on your calendar. So all of a sudden now it's about how do you make people's life simple? You look at the new apps now where you can put your credit card, you can go to the store, you don't have to have cash. So to me, a good way to think about is what problem are you trying to solve? And I think that's where technology, that's where phones are moving to. They're moving away from greater optical clarity and greater processing speeds and greater memory, moving now towards into how can you solve problems for people's ecosystem.
Interesting. And what I'm hearing in a lot of that, what you're describing is like some of the Eugene Schwartz stuff, where it's like there's the novelty stage and then the enlargement stage. Everyone tries to have bigger and faster, and then the sophistication stage. Everyone tries to add more features, and then there's that other period where it kind of circles back around to more of the simplicity. And so I really like a lot of the advice that you shared today, and I think that's so important. Just that to sort of like look at what can be made simpler, and then what I've been hearing a lot from you today is just like all these use cases. Like instead of focusing on how hard you worked or how much money you put into or how superior your product is, it sounds like
Hmm?
what's more important is what can people actually do with it, and how, what kind of cool magic tricks there are, and how can their lives be better by using this product you made to solve a problem.
I think it's always a great question, Robert, to when you think about your customers, right? The first thing any business person should be asking is if you put yourself in your customer's eyes, what's in it for them? So no matter what product, what service, what technology, just ask that question, what is in it for them? Because it doesn't matter how cool your gizmo is, or how much gizmo effect you have built into your product. If it doesn't resonate with your customer, if it doesn't do something that makes their life simpler or more efficient or better, or what's in it for them, that's what is going to sell. And then the question is at what value? Is it at a price point where they see the value in it?
Awesome. So what's in it for me? And what's interesting about a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about today is it all kind of seems like common sense, but when you think about it, I mean, a lot of companies, and it sounds like a lot of the businesses that you helped are missing this sort of component. And then the other thing I'm sort of hearing from you as far as the what's in it for me is in nerdy computer programming terms is this term called eating your own dog food. Where basically like if you have you heard this one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and the whole idea of like if you had to eat dog food, you dressed up and make it better so that you'd actually want to eat it, and then well, it makes sense, sort of it look like if you're not in your own business, it makes sense to sort of do that. But I think a lot of people are maybe too close to it, and not I'm not answering or not asking and not answering those simple questions of like how can I make this awesome? How can I make this easy to use? How can I make it simple? How can I make it sort of change lives and stuff like that? And so as we're winding our discussion down today, and as we're about to sign off, and before I ask you about like your websites and books, like is there any sort of just like one sort of statement that you would give yourself 10 years ago if you could?
I certainly, to me, it's get close to your customer. Business starts and ends with your customer. So I would tell you to develop products and services through your customer's eyes. And that kind of wraps around the whole book. It's all about if you get close, if you learn their world, if you understand their pain points, you can begin to either offer a product or services that has perceived value. And if it has perceived value for them, and if you price it right, then you can be successful with that.
Awesome, makes perfect sense. Solve a problem to alleviate their pain, as opposed to just randomly thinking of something and hoping that they'll buy it. Because I mean, you never have any guarantee in that scenario. But then if you say, all right, where is everyone else missing the mark, or where could I be better? I mean, it makes perfect sense that that then you could be the one to sort of swoop in and provide that solution. And so I want to make sure that everyone knows all about who you are and what you do and what you
Mhm.
have. So can you tell us about your books and your websites and where to find all that stuff?
Thanks for that, Robert. Yeah, the best way, if you love what you're listening to, I post my books, I post excerpts from my books, as well as interviews like ours today on my website. It's www.mantra, MANTRA, leadership.com. One word, mantraleadership.com.
Perfect. So mantraleadership.com. And is that, and from there, can they get to everything? Can they get from, there's like the blog and you said and the interviews, but they can get to the
Yeah.
books and all that stuff from there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what I do is I post so you can example if you go there, you can if you're interested in the book, you can it'll link you out to Barnes and Noble or to Amazon or to Ex Libris, my publisher, or so recognized and trusted site.
Perfect. So everyone should go right now to mantraleadership.com and check out everything that's there. So thanks so much, Dana, for hopping on the show and sharing what you had to share with us.
Oh, Robert, it's been my pleasure, and I hope to have an opportunity to come back, and I hope you and all your listeners have a great new year ahead.
Thanks for listening to today's episode with Dana. Make sure to go to robertplank.com/232 to get your links and show notes, and go to robertplank.com/rate. That's RATE to rate and review the show.